Yep.
Okay, and it will be available on our website. So please be sure to keep your microphone on mute during our main presentation. We welcome questions and interactions throughout the program. You can submit your questions using the chat function. Alana and I will monitor the questions and share them with our panel during the Q&A session at the end of the program. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon to start the presentation. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be with you. We're going to talk with you this morning a little bit about taking your events into a new format as COVID-19 has had a serious impact on the event industry and how we gather together. Initially, many events back last March when everything shut down, whether they were conferences or meetings, product launches, entertainment, sports, fundraising galas, they were canceled. People just sort of took an immediate reaction and postponed for a year. And then the more forward-thinking folks put their thinking caps on and decided, well, maybe there's something we can do in the interim. And then that whole kind of new arena opened up, and a lot has been happening over the last few months. Now we conduct most of our day-to-day activities as we're doing right now on Zoom calls with meetings. What we'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about how you take your major events and make a little bit more of a significant jump with those beyond the Zoom format. And we're going to walk you through some of the pieces you need to think about in order to be able to do that. The first step that I'm going to talk about is, because I am an event planner, is to talk about what you should think about before you make that move. And that is to assess the events that you have already done in the past. If you do annual events, if you do a number of events, to step back and review how many you're doing. Many of my clients kind of think more is better. And sometimes they are exhausting their donors, their clients, both in terms of what they're asking for them in return, whether that's donations or more of a significant impact on what the business is doing for them, and also tapping into their time, maybe inviting them across several departments or geographic locations if it's a larger business or nonprofit, where they're asking them to attend pretty frequently. The other important thing to take a step back and look at is, did you achieve the goals that you set for the event? I'm a big proponent of sitting down before you do an event and setting the goals. What are you trying to achieve? And if you did that, then you can measure your success against that. So saying that, I can't get it to go here. There we go. You should review your cultivation and stewardship strategies. What was your event participation rate? Recently, I was involved in an online event that was what we're now calling in the industry a hybrid event, which took a very small number of people that attended live as they would any event, which meant they were all socially distanced in a room, but they saw what they would normally see: a stage, some speakers, things happening on the screens. But everything that happened on the screen was pre-taped, and it was seamlessly run together for a very large audience that joined remotely. Also taking a look back at did your events reach the right demographic? Did you get the return, not just in numbers for your participation rate, but are you getting the right people in the room? That's going to be, to some extent, maybe even a little easier with an online format, because people are making a far less time commitment, and it's easier for them to join you remotely. And the most important thing is, when you look back at your events, did you have a good follow-up strategy for maintaining contact with your clients and your donors following the event? A lot of nonprofits that I work with the event is kind of the be all and end all, and you kind of have to push a bit to make sure that a follow-up structure is in place. You don't just say it's over. That's when the real work begins of really engaging the people that you were able to get to attend. The big part of an assessment, obviously, is reviewing your budget. Did your revenue and expenses meet your expectations? And a lot of times people will review, well, you know, we thought we were going to spend this much, but we spent a little more. But what I find is even more important is, did you really track your revenue sources? Did you estimate on a number of people? And again, did you get that ticket revenue? Was your sponsorship where you had planned it to be? Did you get the return on your investment for a product launch? Did you get the sales? Being able to look back through that so that when you start to look at your budget for moving into a virtual event, you know where your successes were, and then you can do what's now the industry word, pivot, into what you're going to spend this time, and know that you're going to spend more on technical and AV costs because you're going to pre-tape probably more than you would have, or potentially all of it, to show it almost as a television show. But some of the usual costs that you would expect, like catering, a venue rental, unless that it is a hybrid event and you still are gathering a few people, your decor, all of those things will be way down. But one thing I've noticed a lot of my clients are doing is, in fact, I believe right now, even as we're speaking, the Preservation Alliance is holding their annual awards event. It was scheduled for noontime. It's usually a cocktail event, but they coordinated with DeBruno Brothers, and at certain sponsorship levels, people who signed up to view it virtually, and it's being done all virtually. They were shipped a box from DeBruno Brothers. So you're creating this atmosphere in your own home or office or wherever you're going to view one of these events to make it a little more nice and touchy-feely. I don't know what a better word for that is, but you're going to have to count on having some additional shipping costs, and maybe things that if you gave away a goodie bag at an event, people picked that up and took it home with them. You're not paying any more than what the items were in the bag, but now you may incur some of those kind of costs. And frankly, in thinking it through, those are probably good costs to think about. So you can use this assessment to tailor your virtual event, but I always come back to, delivering your message and making sure people understand your mission, whether it's, selling this product, doing this corporate event, or if you're a nonprofit and you have a serious message to deliver. It's even more important now because the overall timing and pace of your event is going to be different than it was when you gather people in person. You're not going to mix and mingle and have that chance with people over cocktails. You're not going to have a band and dancing afterwards, or whatever those kind of events were for you. That's going to be significantly trimmed down because you've got folks sitting at their office, they're in front of their computer, they're watching it on their televisions in their living rooms. You want to make it short, succinct. If you've got a good speaker that you always put on the stage, your CEO, someone from the board, and you would normally give them 5 minutes to speak, well, you're now going to give them 1.5 to 2. Everything's going to go from 3 to 4 hours down to maybe 45 to 75 minutes, so that you're all in and all done. And part of what I do with events is some, driving it like a bus, I call it stage management, where it's seamless execution of all of those pieces. You still have to have that, even if everything is done in advance, but especially if there's still a live portion, to get that seamless execution between those, not leaving any dead time or seconds, because at a live event, that's when you lean over to your friend next door or your spouse and you start a little quick conversation. If you're in your living room, that's the good time to go grab another glass of wine. So you've lost them. So it's going to be very, very important to still do the same kind of detailed timelines and planning for the execution of your online or hybrid event. So be present, be relevant, keeping in contact, rather than those groups that canceled their events, even doing something on a smaller scale for your major supporters in this format, even if you pushed off your major event for a year, something that keeps you in front of them is very important. The real plus side of being thrown into having to rethink and do all this is you can significantly expand your reach with a online or a hybrid event, because you can get out to a much wider geographic audience. In fact, internationally, if you choose, where that would be much more prohibitive when you're gathering people and they have to get in a car or a plane to attend. The example that I think of is this year, my husband had a major anniversary at the reunion at the University of Pennsylvania. That was put online and people could, join in. But what I see as important from what we've learned on that is that carrying that forward into the future when everyone can gather again, that live streaming those events allows the alum from California to still join in, which they wouldn't have been able to do. And we now want to think about how to carry forward what we're learning now to the future, but making what we do now important for our organizations and for our constituents. So to get a little more into detail on how to do that, I'm going to pass it over to Rich Tolsma, and he'll talk you through that.
Thank you, Sharon.
Welcome.
I wasn't sure if I was on screen yet. Anyway, I just want to preface this by saying that most of what I'm going to say is going to apply to you whether you are in a corporate environment or in a nonprofit environment. A lot of the principles apply either way. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. There we go. So the first thing I always ask people to do for any production, whether it's a virtual production or a traditional thing like we used to do, is you got to ask yourself some questions. So always start there. I think the first question that we need to ask ourselves right now is this going to be a live presentation? Is it going to be recorded? Or as Sharon called it, is it going to be a hybrid, a combination of the two? And there are advantages to recording pre-produced segments ahead of time. And some of those are that you can control the running time. We've all been to events where someone gets on stage and they go on, and you wish that they would stop a little sooner. If it's pre-recorded, there's the magic of editing, and you can cut that person's speech down to the most important segments of it. There are fewer opportunities for technical glitches. That's a real big one, because you've all attended Zoom meetings and webinars, and you hear sound drop out and you see the picture drop out sometimes. If it's pre-produced, there's a lot less opportunity for that to happen. There's also the potential for better viewer engagement because, as Sharon alluded to earlier, you can make it like a television show, so it can be more entertaining. So the next thing to ask yourself is, all right, given those advantages, do we really even need to have anything live? Or is it good enough if it just looks like it's live? And if you do need something to be live, well, what things would force you into going live? And I can think of maybe 4 things right off the bat. One is if there's breaking news. If you're in an environment where news that's happening right now is affecting you or your business or your organization, then you might want to have some live segments so that those can be addressed. If you've got question and answers, you might want to incorporate a Zoom session in there or switch over to a Zoom session. But Q&A can be done on a lot of different platforms, just like as you are doing today, hopefully, typing in some questions that the moderator will then present to the panel. If you've got a live auction, you'll want to have a live presence. And also, even if your auction isn't live and you're trying to do a tally of the funds being raised. So that's another one I can think of. Why am I not advancing? There we go. So what are some of the things that you can do ahead of time very easily? Speeches, messages from the president, the executive director, the board chair, or other people. Panel discussions, they can be taped ahead of time. And again, they can be edited down to a manageable length. Storytelling really, you kind of need to do it in advance, no matter what. And even in your live events, the stories are usually pre-produced. Stories about the impact your organization has, or your customers that you're thrilling to death there. So you tell those stories ahead of time. Entertainment can be pre-recorded. Keynote address, and here's another advantage to doing something virtually and recorded ahead of time. You can have a celebrity or somebody who's well-known or well-regarded in your field do a keynote address, and they don't have to come to you. So you can save a little money on travel and lodging costs, and maybe get a guest that you'd love to have but otherwise would not have been able to. Awards and honors, you can present those awards ahead of time. They can do a little acceptance speech. Boom, it's all done. And you don't have to worry about giving them the hook to take them off the stage. A couple other questions. Should your event be ticketed or private or free and open to the public? There's different reasons for doing all of them, but you need to ask yourself that question. And where's it going to live? How's it going to go out, and where is it going to remain when the event is over? Will it be on Vimeo? Will it go out on your website, or will it be on YouTube? So all of those questions you need to ask before you even get started. So if you're going to pre-produce things, how can we safely record video at this time? And we, I think, are all aware that things might get worse again before they get better. Hate to say it, but we have to be prepared for how are we going to be able to capture video. So there's essentially 3 ways that I can think of. One is do it yourself. And you see a woman there showing us a bad example because she's holding the camera with her hands. But there are ways to do it nicely and pretty professional looking. We've got some tips on our website and under blog. There's a bunch of little videos that talk about lighting and how to stabilize your camera, how to get the best sound. And there's a lot of resources out online if you just hunt around for them. But you really want to make yourself look good. It's possible to shoot in person and to do it safely and responsibly. Here's a CEO of an organization speaking with celebrity chef Jose Andres, and you'll see how we set it up. This was right in mid-March at the height of things, and you could see how safely we were distanced. So it is possible to do that. We've even done shoots inside more and more now. but we maintain a safe distance. We are wearing masks and we keep the crew to a minimum. There's another way. There I am a couple days ago doing a remote shoot with Billie Jean King. She's on the left there. She is recording onto her iPhone. And when our interview is finished, she will upload that file. So we don't have any of the glitches that are inherent in going directly over the internet. And the two little windows off to the right, I'm on the bottom there, so you can see the director. And the two people up top are the clients, so they can sit in. And they can all be in different places, doesn't matter. So that's a really great development. Technology is really coming to bat to help us get through this time. There's a lot of creativity going on. For live elements, what are some of the things that we do there? Well, one is what we're on right now, is Zoom webinar. We all know what those are like, but there are some glitches inherent with that. If you're doing a webinar and like we are today, this is the perfect solution and it hardly costs anything. There's something called live stream. There's something else called OBS that's available free. You can see what this looks like. This actually looks pretty much like a television broadcast studio would look. It's got all of the bells and whistles and all of the controls right there. And you can put out pre-recorded segments, and you can put out live guests coming in. You can put graphics up on screen. So you have a lot of control over what's going out, but it does take a bit of a learning curve to be able to do it. And there are plenty of folks out there who offer this service for you. If you really have a big event, you can go into a studio and they can put a set together for you. You see people safely distanced there. You can have your live auction going on. You can have your pre-recorded segments. The great thing about this is they'll take care of all of it for you. So if you've got a lot of other stuff to do, this is great. It's very professional. There are studios all over the country that are doing this. I know of one in New York, one here in Philly, and Sharon and I have worked with one in the DC area. So that's another option. It's going to be a little pricier, but if you're looking to make a big impression, that's a good way to go. Be thinking about the viewer experience, because nobody really wants to sit through a Zoom meeting or a Zoom webinar in the evening, or even if they can avoid it in the middle of the day. You want to be able to stream it out to them and encourage them to put it up on their smart TV. If it's a nonprofit fundraising event, like Sharon said, you're sending them possibly a box of goodies from DeBruno's, or even if one organization I'm working with right now, they're going to have a sort of a cooking show where they're making snacks and cocktails. And so you can go make that cocktail and then sit down and watch it in front of your television set. You want to make it pleasant, otherwise you're going to lose them. You want to keep the content varied, and as Sharon mentioned, short. Lots of little segments that keep changing up are going to keep your viewer there and keep them from leaving to go do something else, or just switching you off entirely. A couple of final thoughts. If I can get this thing to change for me. There we go. This is different from your in-person event, and you have to think of it that way. Think of it, as I said, like a television program. And be aware that it's not going to be cheap to do it well, so don't think that you're going to save bundles of money by doing this. Yes, you won't have those costs that Sharon mentioned, but yes, you are going to have different costs, shooting, editing, and you want to take the time and the trouble and the effort that you always take for your live events to make sure that it looks thoroughly professional, that it reflects well on your organization and your brand, or anything else that you do. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin. Once I stop sharing here. I lost my cursor. My cursor disappeared. I can't see it.
Rich, try to hit escape. That might do it for you.
I can see about, there it is. I never saw the cursor, just lit up the button. All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Connor. I'm with Modern Strategic Branding and Communication. That's a lot of syllables. Essentially what we do is we help people express who they are, what they do, and why they do it. Some great tips from both Sharon and Rich before speaking to events, and both Jim and I are going to bring up the last half of this segment. I'll try to keep it easy and straightforward for what we do. So our thought is that your brand is an extension of you, or if anything more, you are becoming an extension of your company for right now. So the company brand, especially on a platform like this where you're seeing so many people want to know who you are and what you're about. I'm going to share a couple thoughts as well, and bear with me here as I get mine. There we go. So thoughts on keeping your brand alive online and in person. So much of what you go through online, or what we're all going through online, is not too much different than what your brand needs to do to be brought to life in person as well. We're doing a lot of the same things. We're seeing some of the people here on our Zoom calls and our online platforms, much as we'd be in person. So keeping your brand alive, I come up with a couple of thoughts. Here's what they're looking to do: avoid apathy. So why do we care, and why should we care now? Your brand is even more alive now online than it was with you just in person. Your ability to express what your company does, at least let them know that you look professional, polished, and profitable, if nothing else. What's the harm if you don't have it? It's going to be questionable. People are going to wonder, are you the professional they're thinking of working with? Is there a firm that is dealing with people directly, or are you dealing with a more of a team inside the company? People want to know who you are. Screen ADD. All of us are called into too many meetings right now. We're all stretched, right? Time is a currency that not all of us have that much of. Is it worth coming to your meeting? What are you doing to make it interesting for me to come and visit with you, whether online or on a phone call? And I always say that doubt can crack an effect belief. If they have questions about your brand, chances are excellent they're going to have questions about everything else that goes on in your company as well. Again, go back to you. You are the person there. Your brand is meant to support you and your efforts in getting in front of people. That's going to be the long-term residue of what they remember about you. Another idea is to manage the noise. You're in charge of you and how you broadcast yourself to your clients. What are they hearing versus what are they listening to? There's lots of noise we're all dealing with every day. Tons of distractions, right? So how many Zoom call meetings can you have? One of my clients, she said she's an average of 7 Zoom call meetings a day. A day. Wow, that'd be exhausting. I don't know if I could do it. So what are they hearing? How much are they hearing? Are they dealing with emails? Are they dealing with phone calls? Are they dealing with text? Are they dealing with kids at home, right? What channel are they tuned to? Are they dealing with email? Are they dealing with text? Are they working off of YouTube? Where are your clients hanging out, and what are they listening to? Is there a way for you to broadcast your brand on that particular channel? If you're already there, how do you improve it? Make sure it's polished and sharp. What's your competition up to? Are they doing something you'd like to do? Don't be afraid to investigate and shop around a little bit as if you were one of your customers, right? What else might they be looking at in addition to you? And I always say, be aware of the chatter, all the noise versus the signal. What is the signal you're putting out, or what is your competition putting out that they may be more attuned to, almost like a dog whistle, as opposed to just chatter? A lot of what we're doing here today is we're networking. We're continuing to network. This is just a different platform that we can all network on. We're all running ragged, right? Each of us has demands in and outside the home. My new favorite hero are parents working home with school-age children, still doing their job and becoming teachers. Shout out to Alana. I'm sure she's doing some of that right now, as a matter of fact, doing very well. So all of the different people that are calling for your attention, how do I manage my brand, myself, and my company in light of all these things to make sure that I've got some dedicated space to go into people? WIIFM, an old mentor of mine told me, people listen to this radio station all the time. What's in it for me, right? What are they going to get out of it? And if they have much to pay, if they're paying attention to you, how much are they going to have to pay? Is it worth paying attention to you? Are you giving them something that they can reuse and repurpose into something else as well? And next, if you're able to, sometimes, certainly on an online platform, if you can mix it up a little bit, give them a little bit something to look at. This is something that we can do, right? 7 tools your computer doesn't have that you bring to the table, that they're going to be looking to you for, and you can share with them. Keep it a little bit interesting. Sometimes, myself included, if you're going to share a lot of information online, it can get tedious sometimes. So mix it up a little bit. Give them a little bit something to, maybe something unexpected. Become a resource for them. How helpful are you? Are you helpful beyond what you sell? Can you make connections to other people in the industry, or maybe they're dealing with something on a contractor at home, or they need a certain service at home? Who can you put them in touch with to at least get them one step up the ladder a little bit? Become a connector. That's why we're all here at the Irish Chamber, right? One of the best resources in the Philadelphia area is to be able to do this and get around people like ourselves. You'll notice it well. If we're ever allowed to have the awards again back in February, right? There's 400 or 500 people in that room. It's a huge room. It's a busy, buzzing content of people that we can all work with. I always say, put your math skills to work. Compound interest yields big dividends in networking, right? The more people you can at least have a working relationship with, and be friendly and courteous, it's like a big sandbox you get to play in and practice your networking skills. One of the best parts, I think, about platforms like this is you can go into the chat box at the bottom, or the participants, and find out who they are. If you were at a big networking event, you might not be able to get that kind of exposure. You might not know the people that are there. So make sure that your brand is looking and serving you well. Make sure your brand is better, stronger, and wiser every day, making you that way. Again, your brand is there to support you, not the other way. People are going to know you do. And effective communication, look, it's timeless at the end of the day. People are hardwired to look for comfort and familiarity. You see this in a lot of commercials right now. If anybody has seen one of the most recent Amazon series of commercials where My Mommy Works Here, I mean, who's not crying at the end of that, right? It's a tearjerker. Your heartstrings and mind strings are getting, or mind share is coming at you. It really doesn't talk about anything delivering. It just talks about that familial way, certainly what we're all going through right now. And essentially, they're all becoming better brand ambassadors. We're brand ambassadors right now for whatever company we represent. It's challenging. Certainly now people are scratching their heads saying, what can I do a little bit differently right now? I'm not sure you need to do too much different. Maintain consistency and be patient with your brand. These are the things that are going to carry you through any type of a platform and any type of event you might be able to share who you are. I'm going to turn it over to Jim right now. Thanks for your time.
Okay, well, thank you, Kevin. Let me this transition here. Okay. And I'm going to be, I don't have any PowerPoint presentation. I'm coming as a potential customer, I guess the best way to put this, for the likes of our distinguished panel here with Sharon, Rich, and Kevin. But so I'm coming in need of guidance in making this transition into the virtual COVID-19 world, which I think many of you on the participating today can appreciate it. But whether, as I think it was Sharon said earlier, that whether it's nonprofit or profit, we're all thrust into making these adjustments into this new virtual world. So I'm the executive director of development for Irish college and seminary called St. Patrick's College, Maynooth, and I'm the director of development for the North American market. I've been here since 2019, and we have active chapters in New York and Philadelphia, but quite a dispersed donor base around all the major cities here in the States. And generally, I'm just giving you this background leading up to where we are today. But our fundraising strategy has been very, very event-driven. We are somewhat limited in what we have done in the past, trying to expand on that. But we run an annual appeal over in Ireland, and then 2 very high-end dinner events here in New York and Philadelphia, our 2 main chapters. And when I was hired, part of my focus was not only on the stewardship of our existing clients and executing both of the dinners, but also expanding our footprint here in the United States. For a number of reasons, we just needed to step up the efforts to expand and identifying new potential supporters throughout the country and adding chapters in addition to Philadelphia and New York. Obviously, some of the cities like Boston and Chicago, LA, San Francisco, where these have always been traditionally high concentration of Catholics over the last century or so, and where particularly people of Irish descent have settled. But then also looking into some of the other cities where the population has started to grow, areas like Dallas and Denver, Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So we were now, in addition to the dinners, we're adding quite a number of cultivation events, throughout the year. So we had a full calendar plan for 2020, okay, which you can see on the graphic. Also happened to be the start of a 3-year campaign for our 225th anniversary celebration. And, so we had the dinners, which attracted about 160 to 175 guests each. And again, we had a number of cultivation events planned, particularly in Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. And also had the need to conduct our regular correspondence with board members, 2 board meetings a year, as well as some regional advisory committees that we're in the process of forming. So like other nonprofits in the higher education, all of our plans came to a halt with the COVID-19 virus. So we had to cancel all of the events which had been planned, including these cultivation events that were well into the planning phase. So, and it resulted in budget cuts. We executed, which we're still in, an austerity plan to mitigate the negative effects, on the pandemic, which also included curtailing our fundraising activities. So as a group, we decided that we still obviously needed to do fundraising, although in an abbreviated effort. I guess the soft approach, and this was in agreement with all of our board members, and so what we did in order to do something, but using technology, and the obvious choice was going into the virtual world, with which we really didn't have a whole lot of experience in. So, among the concerns that we had to address was, making that adjustment without sacrificing the quality of the interactions, even if they were not, in person, and decide what would be the best format to do it, both from, in both terms of efficacy and then from a budgetary standpoint. I think, as Karen said earlier, doing that calculation for the virtual events and the assessment phase. And so when we are looking at the virtual options, several of our supporters had talked about what one of them called the Zoom fatigue, where, we've all been doing Zoom on both a personal and professional manner. And one of them, and I'm dating myself here, but some of them, even one of them described it as the Hollywood Squares look, where you have, it's a lot of screens. And they said, is there a better way that we could, a better technology that we could use where it could better mimic the in-person experience. And, so this is where we came up. Sharon McCullough and I in Expert Events go back quite a ways. And several months ago, I had approached her with exactly this question, a rhetorical question, how best that we can, make this experience, the virtual world, a much more efficient one. And lo and behold, she and, Rich and several of her other colleagues had already done this. And they showed me and discussed, this world, as Rich described more, which really caught my attention. It's a combination of pre-recorded events as well as live moderated sections to the event. So that's as of today, that's the direction we're going to be trying to go in 2021. And it was just great to hear these ideas from again from more or less of an end user or a customer standpoint, and just giving us some guidance into an area that I didn't have a whole lot of knowledge. So thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you to Sharon, Rich, Kevin, and Jim. It was a great session. I'm just thinking, Alana, we should have had them had this in the first half dozen instead of our 27th webinar. We probably could have, could have put some of this stuff in practice. So, thank you. We're going to go to some questions now. If any of the participants, I neglected to mention that one of our participants today is Dermot Fitzpatrick. He's from the consulate in New York City. So Dermot, thank you for joining us today. And sorry I didn't acknowledge that at the beginning because you were here on time. So thank you. But if anyone has a question, you can just, either write it down or just type in that you have a question, and we'll call on you. Alana or I will be happy to call on you. Until we see somebody that has a question, I have a couple here. Sharon's, and she went first, I'll ask you. Is it difficult to get buy-in from a nonprofit to evaluate the move to virtual in your experience?
It was much more difficult. It was really the clients that I had at that point. There was a lot of knee-jerk reaction and just flat out postponing until 2021. And now we're looking at those again, and they will now probably become more these hybrid and virtual events, because everybody at the point in March where we moved them, everybody thought, oh, well, a year from now, it will just pick up where what was already planned. That's probably not happen. We're probably going to move into this arena. But as time has gone on and people have been participants in other folks, that it's become a little easier for me to talk about and say, hey, let's take a step back again. Let's take all the things that you've done in the past that have been the most successful for you, and then see how we can pitch that into the new format. We're working right now with a client on an international conference that was scheduled to happen up in Providence, Rhode Island. And that was going to happen the end of June. And now,
Daniel, I'm looking at this now.
what we're going to do with that is, since there were a lot of panel discussions and those kind of things that would happen over Zoom, we're going to do something to that. Rev up the attention of folks in January potentially. Send things out in small chunks, the kind of bite-sized pieces that will both energize people to sign in to the virtual event when it happens, and also allow them to start making that contact with their constituents and not losing the entire year.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, this question's for you. What do we do as a company need to be most concerned about regarding our brand for events on and offline? We're getting some background noise from somebody that's not on mute. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. But Kevin, I don't know if you heard the question.
Yes, I did. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine. So I'll open it up, Jack. I think one of the most important things right now is the ability to communicate, which we've all been doing. Certainly we were used to doing in a 3D context, but now communication by email and texting and Zooming is that much more important. So the ability to carry your voice, maybe have a memorable message, certainly some way people can get in touch with you is helpful, because we get introduced to people for a couple minutes. You might want to carry your conversation beyond that. So everybody is in sales for right now, right? No matter what department you're in, if you've got some type of customer contact, whether you're the A2AP department, shipping department, delivery department, everybody is in sales and making an impression of the company. So the ability to communicate is now more important than ever. Does that answer your question?
I think so, yes. And we appreciate you mentioning the Ambassador Award and in your presentation and talking about the networking opportunities. So it certainly is a big change in networking.
You long for those days. Maybe we'll be able to get back to them someday.
Right.
Huh?
But as you pointed out, we still need to be networking. So, Jim, this question's for you, and I think you kind of touched on it, but I'll ask it anyhow and then add something to it about how's the pandemic affected your fundraising strategy, and what's St. Patrick's College doing to mitigate its effect? And
Sure.
I would add on to that, or other nonprofits just not jumping into it for some reason. So, go ahead.
Mhm. No, happy to add, because I did touch on that. I guess that was more or less the premise of how I came to contact Sharon. But one of the things, I guess the old saying, there's a silver lining in every cloud. This has taught us to do a little bit of soul searching in our development efforts, because I've only been here less than 2 years, but I've been fundraising for a long time, and the message was good, but it wasn't a unique message. It was basically attracting top talent, whether it's at the professorial level, of course, the student level, and providing scholarships and financial aid to those students to come, and then maintenance of the very beautiful historic grounds. Again, we're 225 years old. And it was a mission statement that was relevant, but it wasn't a whole lot different. There wasn't a unique value proposition as compared to some other universities. And this has brought to light some of the needs that have come up. We focused on how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected us in an adverse way. What needs have now arisen? And most of them, and I think I speak for a lot of colleges, because I check a lot of college websites out. I'm at my own alma mater and several contacts in the higher ed. And it all pretty much revolves around the students. The hardships of students, especially those who need the scholarship money. A lot of instances where in the middle of the semester, on a week's notice, students were forced to go home, evacuate the campuses. Many of them had to fly home, and this created a hardship. And of course, the lack of the hit that the college took, which affects the financial aid. So it just increased. It made us say, okay, where are some more specific needs rather than just more of a general statement. So that has been, unfortunately at a cost, but a somewhat positive news in helping us focus and be more, I guess, exact on what the needs are for, which helps fundraising.
Just a quick question: Is St. Patrick's in person, hybrid, or remote right now this semester?
They're hybrid. They're hybrid. In fact, they're starting. The postgraduates started this week, about 3 weeks late, and the undergraduates are starting next week. But but they were very fortunate to transition rather effectively to the I think it's easier at the higher ed world than obviously the lower grades in grammar and high school, but yeah, and we'll continue to do the hybrid until this thing passes.
Great, thank you. Rich, a couple questions for you. The first one is, how much lead time do you suggest to put together a good event?
Boy, the more the better. we've had people coming to us with only 6 or 8 weeks of lead time, and there's only so much you can do in that amount of time. I would suggest at least 8 to 12 weeks. If you can plan ahead that way, then you can put together a better and more effective event.
So you need as much time as you would for a live event, I guess, right?
And maybe more, because for a live event, for us specifically, for a live event, we usually do, 1 or 2 or maybe a half a dozen short videos for the award winners or honorees, or a mission video that tells the story of impact that you've had on your constituency. But now we find ourselves doing, instead of 12 to 15 minutes worth of video for an event, we may be doing 40 to 60. So there's a lot more work to do. Yeah.
And did you work with Sharon for live events too before you worked on virtual events?
Oh yeah. And one thing that I've always enjoyed about working with Sharon is we believe this very central thing about events, and we both believe that events are theater, and they need to be approached that way. And I love the way that Sharon puts an event together so that it becomes theater, and now that's even more important. So, and that's why we try to get our clients to work with Sharon, or somebody like Sharon who's really good at crafting the event and putting it together in a way that it flows beautifully. If it's a live event, you still need to have somebody keeping the, if it's a hybrid event, you still have to have somebody that keeps the flow going, that preps the next guest who might be coming online. So the things that an event planner brings to the table are, I think, just as crucial for a virtual event as they are at a live event.
Great. So looking at Paul McGuire in the middle of my screen here. So Paul, don't you have a question?
Oh, Jack, I have all the answers.
Okay. Good to see you, Paul.
We have, it's very interesting. We work with companies coming in from abroad into the United States and vice versa. And obviously trade missions are a big part of our modus operandi, and they've gone. So what we've done, just in line with what everybody is saying here, is we have invested in creating our own studio, if you will. We brought in a production company to set us up with cameras and microphones and the like, and we're in the process of organizing virtual trade missions, which will involve one-on-one presentations by companies to pre-selected partners, economic agencies, and interested parties on this side of the Atlantic. COVID has given us a tremendous opportunity to expand in this way, because as I think has been mentioned, we've had the ability to access higher level people than we would have had was it a face-to-face meeting. And you have to be extremely careful time-wise. You can't bring a busy executive on for an hour and a half presentation. And that's why I liked the editing comment. We also have worked on that. We were part of a webinar a few weeks ago where everybody was given 3 minutes and one speaker took 14. And that destroyed the entire webinar, to be honest with you. Everybody just lost its way. So I'm obviously not in my studio right now due to the darkness. That's because my lights are broken. But I have paid my bill, Jack. And it's definitely the wave of the future. And today already I've done 3 webinars and our virtual presentations, already today. And as I think the timing is important, though. I think 25 minutes is a good window to get a one-on-one call in. It's an assumption to assume that the other party has an hour to give you. So that's what we pivoted to. So it is the wave of the future. And I like to do those, so I'll have to follow up on that.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I knew if I pointed you out, if I called you out, you'd say something. I think we're coming up on 1 o'clock. So does anybody have anything, either a question or anything they want to say, not just the panelists, anybody else before we wrap it up? If so, just unmute yourself and say it. Or, if not, then as we wrap up, I just have to read this because I don't want to, speaking of virtual and trade missions, first, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and thank you to Kevin, to Jim, to Sharon, and Rich for sharing their expertise with the fellow Irish Chamber members today. And for me, learning about, thinking about recorded sessions will just make a lot of the ones I sit in a lot more effective. So I think that's a great suggestion. Our next event is next Thursday morning, the 1st of October, for our virtual program with the Cork Chamber. We will discuss the new direct shipping route between Cork and the Penn terminals in Chester, Pennsylvania. All are welcome to join, and you're welcome to invite colleagues who may be interested in learning more about import-export opportunities available through this new route. Be sure to check our website at iabcn.org for details on that and all upcoming events. So thank you again. Have a great week. Alana, do you have anything? Okay. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.